In this video, we're going to be taking a look at FlatOut.
Are you ready?
FlatOut is a single-player, narrative-driven racing game with a heavy focus on vehicular mayhem. You play as Michaelich, and your goal is to climb up the FlatOut Festival leaderboard by challenging bosses whilst also attracting the attention of more and more fans. This boils down to participate in events until you reach a specific fan milestone, challenge the boss, rinse and repeat. The game should take you roughly 6 to 10 hours to finish the main story, and contains a variety of events ranging from basic circuit races to demolition derbies, and even hurling yourself at a giant dartboard. Let's get into a breakdown of each of FlatOut's major selling points. For a game that has such a heavy emphasis on the narrative, with gameplay constantly being broken up by cutscenes, the story isn't all that impressive. The majority of the plot is contained within the first and last cutscenes of the game, with every cutscene in between being filled with dialogue which feels like it was created by an AI.
Everything is under control.
I don't think it's a good idea to participate in a festival like this after an injury like that.
I feel like I belong here. Too bad nobody knows how I got in the accident.
Yeah, it's too bad nobody knows.
Occasionally there'll be a meme or two thrown in for some humour.
Michaelich! What?
But the jokes usually fall flat. The acting is consistently awful, and the dialogue often doesn't align with what the subtitles are displaying, which is extremely off-putting. The majority of the speech seems to be recorded by one person, who then pitch shifts the audio to play different characters.
You never should have come here. Hell awaits.
As the game progressed, the cutscenes felt like more and more of a chore to sit through. The term Eurojank is often lovingly used to describe a game that is good despite some shortcomings, but FlatOut has all of the jank and none of the charm, which brings us to the next major selling point: gameplay. FlatOut is an arcade racer first and foremost, which makes it incredibly easy to just pick up and play, even if you have no prior experience with any other racing games, so it's very accessible in that aspect. The minute-to-minute gameplay does leave a lot to be desired, however. The game has a very peculiar interpretation of physics, so collisions with objects are often very different from what you would expect them to be, and often serve to hamper the player's experience rather than to enhance. Take the following clip for example. There are a bunch of destructible boxes placed around the landing area of this ramp, but my vehicle smashes into them and just gets stuck in place. Incidents like this occurred multiple times on multiple maps, often forcing me to restart the entire race. The physics issues also bring down the demolition derby game modes, as the vehicles feel like they have no real weight to them, and smashing into enemies isn't very satisfying. You're supposed to do more damage to vehicles based on how fast you drive into them, but this, again, often feels very inconsistent, making the demolition derbies feel very random and unrewarding. Smashing into vehicles at high speeds is supposed to be fun, not frustrating. According to some of the Steam reviews from people who tested FlatOut, the game did actually have multiple physics options to choose between, but the developers removed this shortly before release.
Michaelich, what would you like to order?
I would like to have number 9.
And now they have discounts for extra dip.
For extra deep?
Yes, and for a large soda.
Dan, order this.
The performance in the game is not great. I have a decent hardware setup and I was getting frequent frame drops below 60 FPS. There have been multiple small patches since the game released which claim to improve performance, but I haven't noticed any improvements at all, so your mileage may vary. Another small thing that may upset some people is that the female characters are overly sexualized, and the only black character in the game is in a gang, lives in South Central Los Angeles, and is involved in gun crime, which seems a little bit insensitive. Some of the boss fights are also extremely frustrating and made me want to quit, but I persevered to the end of the game as I strive to provide an objective review of the complete package whenever I review a game. So, overall, FlatOut is a very difficult game to recommend, as there are so many components that really let the game down, and I believe there are some much better alternatives available that are much higher quality, such as the old FlatOut games and Wreckfest. Playing through FlatOut actually made me reinstall FlatOut 2, and I had a much better experience with that. The developers have released a roadmap of additional things they plan to implement, but I feel as if additional content won't fix some of the core issues the game suffers from, but only time will tell. Many thanks to the developers and the publisher for providing access to their game, and a huge thank you to you, the audience, for listening to me waffle on about video games. If you haven't done so already, then please consider subscribing to me here on YouTube and following me on Twitter, as it really helps the channel grow. I currently have several other reviews in progress, so stay tuned for them. See you next time.
Are you serious, Renka? What the hell?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of anime. I can show you my collection.
Hello, what the fuck? Anime, do you hear me at all?
Shut up, Mihalych. The license is already on your desk. I'll take care of her myself.
Have you seen Fairy Tail?
Yeah, that's cool anime. Sort of.